Okay, so let's begin by saying that I'm not used to using Reddit, but I've seen people post their stories and experiences on this, so I decided why the hell not. When I was about 16, I met my now deceased wife. We were childhood lovers and stuck with each other with relative ease throughout our teen and adult years. We didn't argue that much, and when we did, it was finished pretty as quickly as it started. We have 2 kids together, and we were a pretty normal household. My wife was a very spiritual person. She was very much into magic and spirits. She wasn't a loony, just a tad obsessive. Anyways, she passed away 2 years ago due to a lost battle with cancer. It pretty much destroyed me. I felt as though the light of my life was taken away from me. I hadn't experienced that pain in my life often, but when I did, I rarely got over it. Just a few months ago, I started having problems with my sleep. At first, it was little things. Waking up in a sweat, having difficulty breathing, waking up and crying, but then it slowly began to get worse. I started seeing my wife in my dreams, and she kept calling out for me. I couldn't move towards her, and I couldn't speak either. I always woke up from these as soon as my wife came close to me. But it didn't stop there. A few days after I started having the dreams, I began seeing my wife's face in reflections of stuff, like the windows, pots and pans, kitchen utensils, anything that was reflective. It showed her standing behind me, and when it didn't, it showed her standing a few feet behind me in the corner of the room. During this time, I had my children sent to my parents due to the fact I was on medication and didn't want them to see me going through it. Anyways, I've started hearing her. Not speak, more like when you think you hear someone call your name, but you're not 100% sure whether you actually heard someone or not. Objects in my room are moved, not by a lot, just by a few centimeters, but I can still tell. It's just one of those things, you know. But yeah, stuff is still getting worse. I'll keep whoever's interested updated. Edit 1. I've decided to write whatever happens regardless of how small, but first let me say I appreciate every single person that took their time to reply. But I must say I am in a stable mindset and have been getting sleep during the day whenever I miss out on it at night. I do not think the thing that is toying with me is my wife anymore. I've been getting cold flashes and lightheaded since I've been open with this. I'm not sure what's going on. Edit 2. I went to my therapist today and decided to tell them what's going on. I told them about the strange happenings that I was dealing with. Today has been wild. My therapist told me that it was or could be post-bereavement hallucinations, but I'm not sure that's what it is. I've had objects flung at me from across the room. The aura of the house is just a constant feeling of dread. I'm not sure what to do now. I was driving home from a road trip. A very windy day on the highway, the type of wind that knocks over trees, so we decided to take an alternate route off the main highway. The next day at work, I see my client by the front desk. I don't get a chance to speak to him, so I decided to call shortly after to schedule our next meeting. His wife picks up and informs me that I couldn't have seen him as he died in a car accident the previous day, the same highway I avoided. She was happy I called as she was hysterical trying to figure out how to move forward with the finances. I think he visited me as he knew his wife needed that financial planning phone call at that moment. I saw him clearly as I see any other living person. He didn't speak, just glanced over at me. So I'm a truck driver, and how my job works is I will drive to a halfway point and meet with another driver, and we will switch loads and turn back to go home. Well, our meeting point is this parking lot in this ghost town. At least I'm assuming, given everything surrounding it is abandoned and no other points of interest nearby for several miles. I've been doing the same thing every night, Monday through Friday. And sometimes we arrive at the same time, sometimes he waits for me, and sometimes I wait for him. Well, last night I arrived before him and got out to stretch my legs and smoke. This is around 11:40 p.m. Well, while I was standing there, I noticed someone walking up the street. My lights are off and the parking lot is dark, so there's no way to see me, but thanks to the lights from the highway, I can see him. I don't want to be seen by him, so I toss my cigarette on the ground and get into my truck slowly, making as little noise as possible. I climb into the back of my sleeper and close the curtains, but look out the window, and I see an entire group of people, all wearing the same t-shirt, walking slowly in a line, but stopping for a second every third step. Possibly 20 or so people in the line. I call the other driver to warn him, and I look through a hole in my curtains as they walk by, then out the other window to see them just casually walk down the road. Yes, they were walking down the middle of the road. I didn't get out once until the other driver showed up and we swapped and left. This was in Louisiana, about 30 miles from Hammond. So, last time I posted here was around 2 or 3 years ago. Nothing really happened after my previous encounters, and eventually I moved to another house last year. I've been living in a new house for just under a year now, and I thought everything was going to be cool till what happened yesterday. So it's just another day. I wake up and do my daily routine. The day is going great. I go to the bathroom to do my business while browsing Reddit. Suddenly, I see and hear the washroom door get bashed in. I shit myself right there. Good thing I was already on the toilet, since there was no one there and I live alone. I checked the door. There's no evidence of any damage on the door or to the frame. The door was still locked. I just can't comprehend what the hell happened. How can something bash a door in but not leave any sort of damage or trace? There was nothing behind the door either. Now this house is old as shit and lacks soundproofing, and you can hear everything, and I mean everything. You can hear sounds from the basement to the top floor, and let me tell you, it was dead silent the whole time till that door opened. Now, this will sound like such a long stretch, but I believe this is one of the previous things I've encountered, or some sort of leader of these entities letting me know that no matter what I do, no matter where I go, they're not too far behind, and they could have ended me a long time ago. I'm pretty sure they're just messing with me, but sending a message at the same time. Rarely I wake up with tiny little cuts or scratches around my arms and legs, though I think it's just my own nails causing it while I toss and turn in my sleep, but it could possibly be related to this. There have been odd things that have happened rarely, too, like the sounds of some small objects falling, but I just think it's the stuff in my drying rack sliding around. But what concerns me the most is food-related items disappearing, but they show up in a different place, days or weeks later. I talked about several things in a previous post with how spiritual my girlfriend's family is and how I have had a few experiences myself growing up. The activity at our new house has picked up a little. The other day I was soaking in the bath. I'm a water gremlin and love taking warm baths and just relaxing. My cat, Christina, always has to be in the bathroom with me. She is a black and white cat. My girlfriend was out on a walk, and none of the other animals were nearby when this happened. I heard the click of the bathroom door being opened. I assumed it was my girlfriend and turned to look at the door, calling her name. The doorknob was slowly turning as the door eked open. No one answered. There was no one on the other side. I wasn't really scared for some reason. I was just curious and too tired to get up and shut the door. I definitely feel like the previous home's owner, Uncle Will, is still around, but it doesn't really bother me. I've never felt threatened, but I have always felt like there is another energy there. Another thing that happened was I was sitting on the couch watching The Naked Gun. My Sheba, Scooby, was chewing on his toy. He suddenly started staring into the kitchen and snarling and barking. All the cats were in the living room with me, and nothing was where he was barking. Once again, I felt like I wasn't alone, but I didn't feel threatened. Often our cats stare at the ceiling like something is there, but they don't hiss or growl, they occasionally meow. I would love to hear some of your stories. I've always loved the paranormal and believe that we still leave some part of ourselves behind. Tell me, what have you seen? Edit. Girlfriend came home from a walk tonight. She loves going on walks. I was taking a shower. I just hear, babe, did you leave the back door open? I was like, no, I never do. I close and lock that shit after I take Scooby potty because I'm paranoid. The back door was open. The office door was locked and I didn't hear anything, so there's no way someone broke in. We checked the house. Oh, and the garage light was on and the door unlocked, but the garage was clear too. Maybe the ghost was mad. We turned the light back off. After being assaulted, I spent 2 nights in emergency. Then my third and last night I was moved to my own room in an older part of the hospital. Now I had been knocked out, had 3 eye and nasal fractures, plus being quite dosed up with painkillers. So not sure of the time, but everything was quiet. I didn't notice him come in, but I woke up because I heard my charts being removed from the bed railing. There sat who I think was a male nurse. He had on gowns that made me think he had been in surgery. He flicked through the charts, not talking, just making sounds of someone disappointed in what they were reading. I finally said hey or something, which got him to look at me. So, this doesn't explain the recent poor life choices made by you, which is how you found yourself being in the place you nearly had the life beaten out of you. Surely this makes you realize you need to change some things? Tired, drugged, and hurting, I agreed with him and was going to ask why those things were on the charts, but he cut me off by saying, yes, he agrees, and then exits my room and walked up and put his arms around the shoulders of 2 nurses at the night desk. He loudly says, I told you I'm a healer. I swear, even being dazed and confused, the 2 nurses he approached and spoke to did not acknowledge him at all. I went back to sleep until a nurse woke me. I briefly mentioned the male nurse visiting, but she brushed it off as me dreaming, as no male nurses worked that ward last shift. Not the strangest thing to happen, but it's never sat right with me. Thanks for letting me share. I've never really made a post on Reddit before, but I've always wanted to share this story. At the time it happened, I did tell my flatmates, but I left out certain details, not wanting to seem like a weirdo to them. I've had a handful of strange experiences throughout my life, but most have been far more subtle than what I'm about to tell you. This happened sometime between 2012 and 2014. I would have been in my late 20s at the time, living in a share house in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. I worked nights packing shelves at a supermarket, a job I absolutely hated but had kept up all through uni. In fact, I'd actually graduated in early 2012, but found I was too lazy to just quit. I ended up spending those last few years in the share house kicking around, working this crappy dead-end job, waiting for everyone to go their separate ways so my life could start. After each shift, I'd catch the bus home from work at around 11 p.m., get off at the top of the hill at the shops, then walk down the hill towards home. It was only about a 10-minute walk home from the bus stop, and I only mention all these details because I probably caught that bus and made the same walk 1,000 times in all the years I held that job. This was the only time anything even remotely creepy happened. I'd hopped off the bus and was headed downhill with the cemetery on my left and a row of simple 1- and 2-story homes on my right. I almost never saw any people at this time of night, that's how quiet the area was. The way is also well lit, and despite a cemetery looming over your shoulder, there's nothing eerie about it. In fact, it's quite a beautiful, well-tended cemetery, filled with interesting old markers, statues, and things. You'd see people jogging or walking through it most days. The cemetery is bordered by a sandstone wall that follows the way downhill, then left along this coastal road that sort of loops back around. I was maybe halfway down the hill when a plain white van drove past on my left. At first I thought nothing of it. I didn't break pace, and the van didn't stop or slow as it went past. I watched the tail lights grow small, sweeping left as it took the bend at the bottom of the hill. But as soon as it disappeared, I had this very odd feeling come over me that I was going to see it again. Not sure how else to describe that. It wasn't like a voice in my head or anything, just an odd, fleeting impression that when I got to the bottom of the hill, that same white van would be waiting for me. So I got to the bottom, turned left, and saw a pair of headlights coming back towards me. They were too far to see if it was the same car, but immediately I knew it was. I didn't feel scared or anything, but I knew then that whatever was about to happen was going to happen, whether I wanted it to or not. Again, just a fleeting impression. This time, the van slowed and came to a stop at the side of the road. There was a young guy driving. I can't remember whether the passenger side window was already open or whether he leaned over to open it, but either way, he leaned across and called to me to come over. All I thought in the moment was, he probably needs directions. But as I approached, I immediately began to feel very uneasy. That gentle impression I'd felt earlier, watching the van drive past, now solidified into a vague feeling of dread. I felt as if I shouldn't get too close, so I came about as far as the grassy verge, then stopped. I remember the radio in the car was playing, just some random pop song. He might have reached over and turned it down, I can't remember. I also don't remember too much of what he looked like, to be honest, except that he was maybe about my age or a little older, had longish blonde hair and a few days' growth on his face. He didn't strike me as threatening, so the unease I felt was more confusing at first. He spoke with a British accent. I just assumed he was a traveler. "Excuse me," he said. "Can you help me? I'm trying to get to the cemetery. Do you know where I can find the cemetery?" Now, I was really confused. Just over his shoulder, on his right, less than 20 feet away, the tops of grave markers and crypts poked above the sandstone wall. Like I said, the way was well lit, and he would have definitely seen the cemetery as he drove this road a moment before. In fact, he'd driven down to the far end of it, then made a U-turn. That's when I'd seen him coming back. At the other end, where the road loops around the coast, the wall wasn't high, and you could clearly see all the graves, even in the dark, stretching back up the hill. It made no sense. I was just about to answer when my blood absolutely ran cold. I froze mid-word, my mouth hanging open. Somewhere in the back of the van I could clearly hear a woman screaming and crying for help. I could even hear her banging against the inside paneling. I heard it clear as day over the radio playing. I knew it wasn't a recording, but it was also somehow strange and seemed slightly unreal to me. Again, not too sure how to explain it. I definitely heard it, and it scared the hell out of me, but I didn't react the way I thought I would. I looked at him, and he just stared back and said nothing, making no effort to explain the screams or even acknowledge we were hearing them. But there was no mistaking it. I could still hear it clearly as we stared at each other. "Sorry, I have no idea," was all I could get out. He nodded, said thanks anyway, and drove off. I ran the rest of the way home, which thankfully was only 2 minutes away. When I got in, I was out of breath and shaking. My flatmates were all asleep, and I went straight to my room. If there had been even 1% of doubt in my mind, like maybe I'd imagined it, I would have probably woken someone first and at least told them what had happened. Instead, I called the police. I had to explain the story to 2 different cops. Long story short, because of a jurisdictional thing, my area actually fell under a police station further away than the local one I'd called. They took it seriously, took all my details, and said they'd send a car to look for this van. Unfortunately, I hadn't seen the license plate number. In the moment, I hadn't even thought to check, stupidly. And my description of the driver wasn't much more detailed than what I've described here now. Though they had my details, the police never called back to follow up, and nothing showed up in the news or any newspapers. When I told my flatmates about it, I left out the strange feelings of dread and just stuck to the details. They mostly thought I'd been pranked somehow, and while I guess that's possible, to this day I know that's not what happened. It's one of those had-to-be-there things, but the whole thing felt so unusual and didn't play out like any kind of prank. The whole thing lasted not even 3 minutes from when he first drove past to when he drove off, and our interaction lasted probably not even 20 seconds. But it stayed with me for years, and I often think about it, wondering what happened. I've thought about it a lot over the years, and my gut tells me that there was something else going on. What I mean by this, I don't actually believe there was anyone screaming for help in the back of the van that night, but 100% I swear on my life that what I heard was a woman screaming and crying for help, and that it was coming from the back of the van. I actually don't think the driver could hear it either, but what that means, I really don't know. Anyway, that's my story. Like I said, I've got a few others, but this one is the most dramatic, and I suspect it will stay with me for the rest of my life. My whole life, my mom has told me to pray to St. Anthony to find things. Dear St. Anthony, please look around for my blank must be found. And I can't remember a time it has failed. But the skeptic in me has also reasoned that the items would have come up at some point without St. Anthony's help. My mind changed today. About 2 weeks ago, I was pulled over for speeding, and I guess when the officer gave me back my license, I didn't put it back in my wallet, which is uncharacteristic of me to do. I have been searching everywhere. I turned this car upside down, ripping up the floor mats and taking everything out. This ID was not in the car. After almost 2 weeks of searching for it, I began to feel anxious because I'm going on a flight and will need it to travel a week from now, and I wouldn't have enough time to order a new one. Yesterday, I thought I would flip my car upside down one more time, and nothing. But the whole time I was praying to St. Anthony. The next morning, today, I shit you not, my ID was just laying on the passenger side floor. There is simply no explanation. Thank you, dear St. Anthony. I am now undoubtedly a believer. About 2 years ago, my friends and I took a trip to West Virginia for my best friend's birthday. She loves the legends of Mothman. We wanted to go and visit the TNT area that he was supposedly sighted in. Well, we were all bumbling idiots and hiking through the woods, a construction site. No, we didn't find Mothman. However, my girlfriend and I looked up as we were lagging behind the group, keeping watch. I swear to God, I was looking up and saw a monkey. The stereotypical kind with the curled tail and about the size of a watermelon. I thought I was seeing things, but my girlfriend saw it too. I looked at her in shock, and she looked back at me like, did we really just see that? I thought it was a bit strange, but it could have just been someone's pet who was released. I'm not even sure where to start. This all happened 2 mornings ago. I honestly feel crazy. I can only think of 3 possible situations. 1, my friends and family are playing the most elaborate prank I've ever heard of. 2, I'm going crazy. Or 3, I woke up in an alternate universe. So, for context, I got my dog Milo 4 years ago from my cousin. He was a 1-year-old pit bull at the time. When I got him, my girlfriend was worried because we have a 1-bedroom apartment and she thought a pit bull may be too large for our apartment. So Friday morning, I got out of bed to feed Milo and take him for a walk. I go into my kitchen and there is sitting a dog I don't recognize. It's a smallish beagle, and I've literally never seen it before and have no idea whose dog it is. My mind starts racing because I'm not sure how it could have got in my apartment. My first thought is that my girlfriend must be dog sitting. She works 3rd shift, 1 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. I go to bed around 10 p.m. every night, so I was assuming when I went to bed and one of her friends must have asked her to watch their dog. I send her a text asking whose dog it is. I decide I'll walk Milo and this dog separately because I've never had to walk 2 dogs at once. I go to the bathroom to find Milo because that's the only place he could be hanging out. I walk into the bathroom and it's empty. I call for him and here comes the beagle. I'm confused, but again I assume my girlfriend must have something to do with this. Maybe she took Milo somewhere and didn't go to work and didn't get a chance to tell me. At this time, I notice the dog has a collar with a little name tag. I reach down to read it and my stomach drops. It says Milo. I was kind of freaked out, but I honestly thought it was a coincidence. I text my girlfriend again and ask where her and Milo are and that I'm going to take this dog for a walk and look for Milo. I go out and I'm looking everywhere in the neighborhood for Milo. I was really worked up and didn't notice I had some missed messages from my girlfriend. They basically say she has no idea what I'm talking about and freaking out about where Milo is. As I go to respond, I see her pull into our neighborhood. She parks and jumps out of the car and runs up to the beagle crying and saying, "I thought he was gone. Where'd you find him?" I ask what she means, and she says, "You said Milo was gone," and I said, "Yes, he is." And she gets this weird look on her face and asks if this was some corny prank. We watch YouTube prank couples a lot. I start crying from frustration and tell her no, that Milo is really missing. I tell her how I woke up to this dog and that Milo was just gone. She still thinks I'm messing with her and says she doesn't understand the prank and kind of gets annoyed and starts to take the dog inside. She tells me my prank was stupid and didn't work. I start getting mad and telling her this isn't a prank and that Milo is really gone, and she screams, "No, the fuck he isn't. He's right here. What are you even talking about?" Something about how serious she was completely devastated me, and everything just kind of clicked that this dog was really Milo. I started freaking the hell out and telling her that Milo is a pit bull and that I don't know what the hell is going on. I pull out my phone to get pictures of pit bull Milo and everything is gone. No photos of Milo at all. There's just a mix of pictures I remember and ones that I don't. There's pictures of this beagle Milo on my phone, though. I start having a panic attack. I call my mom. She has no idea what I'm calling about. I message my friends in our Snapchat group chat. They're clueless as well. I call my cousin that gave me Milo, and she tells me that he's definitely a beagle. I don't know what's going on. Milo was 100% a pit bull. My city doesn't let pit bulls at the dog park, so we've never even been. This is something I talk to my girlfriend about a lot. How would I have memories like that? My family thinks I'm joking. My girlfriend wants me to go to the doctor. I'm feeling I'm going insane, and I can't stop crying because I want Milo back, and if I'm in some other timeline, I'm afraid to find out what else is different. One thing that I've noticed is that anyone I bring this up with has a bad reaction to me mentioning an alternate timeline. They get visibly upset. I'm so lost, y'all. I'm writing this more for documentation than anything, so in case I wake up tomorrow and everything's normal, maybe this post will still be here for me to show my friends and family. I'm sorry to ramble, y'all. I'm not even sure if this is the right place for this post. In February 2020, I was snowmobiling for the first time. My boyfriend at the time was driving all day and finally let me drive at the end of the trip. We had been dating for 2 months, and this was our first trip together. I'm going around the last bend, and I accidentally floor the snowmobile instead of pushing the brake. I go flying off a cliff and end up 50 feet down. The snowmobile is on top of me, upside down, still running with the bottom part spinning. My helmet has flown off and my head is 1 inch from a tree. I am terrified. My boyfriend managed to roll off the back at the last minute and is trying to save me, but the snow is really deep and he's having a hard time getting down the steep cliff. My legs are fully submerged in snow and the snowmobile on top, and I'm not sure if I'm paralyzed. He calls for help and all these men run down to save me. When they finally pull me out, I can stand, and it's the happiest moment of my life. I'm not paralyzed. I don't have so much as a scratch on me. Do I have a concussion? Maybe. It's hard to say. The snowmobile also miraculously has minimal damage, only the little plastic windshield part is cracked. In hindsight, this moment is where everything changed for me, but you have to understand, I didn't piece this together and come to this realization until months later. These are the differences. There was suddenly a pandemic. Everything was shut down within a few days. In my old timeline, there was a virus going around, but it had only impacted a few people and was similar to norovirus or flu, not big enough to be worried about. I had a different job. At the time, I chalked it up to the pandemic. We were on the trip because I was about to start a new job. I had signed the contract and I knew what the role entailed. I was going to start the Monday after. But after the crash, I couldn't get a hold of my new boss for 9 months, and he finally told me I got the job in November, even though I had accepted it in February. He also comments how I have never been into the office when he gave me a tour in January 2020, and we spent the day together. The role I'm in is completely different than the papers I signed. My loving, awesome boyfriend was physically abusive for the first time that night. He got blacked out and attacked me, choking me. He was crying the next day, and nothing like this had ever happened before. I thought he was traumatized from the crash and let it go. That was another thing that was different. I would have never let that go before. I come from a loving childhood where my dad was my best friend always. I would have never put up with that before the crash and was shocked I did. In the old timeline, I was on a low dose of Effexor, Xanax, and blood pressure medication. I don't take any medications at all in this timeline. Over the next year, a series of weird things happened that I don't seem to understand, and they keep happening to the point I start to feel suspicious. All of a sudden, I have an incurable disease I didn't have before. I'm in pictures I have no idea what the context is. I'm wearing clothes I don't own anymore. My friends have memories of me I don't share, and I'm getting more and more depressed. Boyfriend keeps physically abusing me, and I can't get out of it. I have no will to save myself. I just keep thinking, this can't be my life. This isn't my life. I just felt like I wasn't supposed to be here, and I finally looked at Reddit and realized that I died in the snowmobile crash, and this is an alternate timeline I'm in. I start to just agree with friends when they say, remember when you said this and that, and we went here and did this? But I have no recollection. My CAT scans are normal at this point after visiting the ER. To be honest, I wasn't the most observant person to begin with. A new couch could be in the living room for days and I wouldn't notice, so when all the stores and shops are different in one area of town, I don't know if that was always there or new. I finally work up the nerve to tell my sister, who is surprisingly supportive. She asks what else is different. There was this song in the other timeline. It was a very popular song by Shania Twain or a Sheryl Crow type. Anyone would know it. I sing it to her with the lyrics and tell her we always used to listen to it growing up. She has no recollection of it. I type the words into Google and the song doesn't exist here. The longer I'm in this timeline, the more I forget the words and melody of the old song. Also, there was no iPhone 13 in the other timeline because Steve Jobs was superstitious and it was supposed to go from iPhone 12 to iPhone 14. I notice little glitches like that are stupid and don't matter. How do I feel about it now? I've accepted my new reality. I feel bad for my sister and parents in the old timeline that they're dealing with my death in a freak snowmobile accident, but there's nothing I can do. Trying to find them again would be like trying to walk from Canada to Australia with no map. Impossible and a waste of time. I'm just making my reality the best I can now. It clearly, for some reason, wasn't my time to die. I mean, to the point of going to the afterlife, if there is one. So I should do something important if I can. I was always agnostic before this, but didn't believe in different timelines. I thought movies like The Butterfly Effect and Run Lola Run were dumb concepts. Now I don't rule out anything, ever. Edit. A few people asking questions. I'll answer best I can. First, no, I'm not with that guy anymore. He is dumped and blocked. To answer questions about the iPhone, here is my comment to another user. Jobs died in 2011 in the old timeline as well, but he had planned out the designs for the phones way past when he died because he knew he had cancer. He had an elaborate release plan of the phones in the future. Did he not hear? And yes, he designed them so that the iPhone 13 would be skipped because he was superstitious. Have I been to therapy? Yes, I've been to multiple therapists, psychiatrists, counselors. I can't find any evidence of the Effexor prescription I had and don't know who would have prescribed it. The bottles were just gone. I don't rule out that I bumped my head and some bad shit happened to the world after that. This is just my theory. I see a lot of people saying, I want to believe you, but... really, that's your choice. Doesn't impact me either way. I just wanted to share my story. Hello, little Vickies. Thanks so much for listening. I post every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday by 5 p.m. Pacific. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment if you have a suggestion or just want to say hello. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to me at veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it beyond measure. And until next time, be good.